Well, hi everyone and welcome back. Today is part 2 of alternator removal, service, fault finding and replacement. Today on part 2 we're going to be looking at putting the alternator back into the car. This one has now been serviced and that video will be available in part 3. So putting it back in is the exact reverse of taking it out. I've already put this big chunk of iron back on that holds the alternator, and we start off with the Chinese jigsaw of dropping the alternator through the hole that's too small for it. So with the radiator still not mounted down properly, we should be able to pull it to the front and get just enough gap to work this into the hole. So if you follow me over here, and let's see how this tricky little thing goes. You just got to find that sweet spot and it will, I can assure you, drop straight into place. But finding the sweet spot can be a bit tricky. Of course, the one thing we don't want to do is scratch any of the paintwork, so it's worth taking your time on this. Make sure you get it just right. And there we go. I knew it would go eventually. So now we can move this iron section round. I don't know if you can see down in there, we're going to take it all the way round and then tilt the alternator face up so we can get the bolt in the end. Now I'm in a bit of a tight spot here. It'll be just the same for you. Okay, there we go, I've got it. Line up the hole. This is the bolt that we're going to be putting in now, which I believe was this one here. Okay, we'll just get a handle to assist. Okay, now we turn the alternator up the right way, and the next thing we've got to do is get the green bracket back in that was in here. So that's this part here, again still 12mm, and what I'm going to do is use the wrench shaft to hold it while I try and get it into place and hopefully not drop it, but it wouldn't be the first time. Now before you do this first one up really tight, just do it finger tight, and then that will allow you to move the bracket into position while you get the next bolt in. Okay, let's do those up nice and tight. There's one. Now you don't want to do them really tight, because remember you're screwing into an aluminium head, or aluminum as some people call it, and you just risk damaging the threads if you do it up too tight. Okay, now let's look at what bolts we've got left. Right, move on to the next one. We're now going to line up the alternator and start getting some bolts into place. Actually, I'm going to start with the biggest bolt. That's this one, and that goes down into that hole there. While the alternator's still loose, it's easier to get in because there's some pipe work in the way. Okay, I've just put that in a couple of turns just to pivot for the moment, and we'll get these in now while the alternator's easy to maneuver. That's two, and again just a few turns while we line all the others up into place. Okay, now we're back to this long bottom one. Keep on turning that in. Now this long one at the bottom is very difficult to get to once the one above it is in its hole. So what we're going to do is get that bottom one as tight as we can with our fingers. Then we're going to get these two top ones as tight as we can with our fingers. And then we're just going to do one more thing and just check this top hole here is in alignment. So yeah, you see that goes straight in and screws in. So now we'll take it back out. We'll grab the 14mm spanner and we'll tighten up that bottom one because we know everything's in place where it should be. And I'm not going to do it really tight on that first go. I'm now going to do these up just a fraction tighter. This way we can make sure everything's lined up correctly. One final check that that bolt drops straight into its hole. Yes, it does. So now we can finish doing up the bottom one. We can finish doing up these two top ones. And now we can put in that top bolt. Okay, while I'm here, we'll now get this power cable back on. Now if you recall, there was a bolt right down the bottom at the back, which is really difficult to get to. So if I can find it first of all, there we go. It's a little 10mm bolt that secures that high power cable in. We've got to get right down into that little hole under there. Back to the children's job again. Okay, get a ratchet on there. I'm not convinced that's gone into the hole properly. Okay, to save some video time, I've obviously not got that quite lined up right. I'm going to cut the video, I'll try and wrestle with that bolt back into place, and then you'll join me after that. Okay, so with that bolt sorted out, which actually had a bad thread on it, and I went and got another bolt, we now need the little 10mm nut, which goes on the end here. So hopefully I can get that started with my fingers. Yep. Okay, get the wrench, do up that 10mm. Okay, and then there's one final cable here, the big plug if you remember. And that plugs into the end of the alternator just there, all the way home. Now just before we plug in the radiator cables again, we've just got this bolt on the end here to do up. If I can find my spanner. There we go. So this is your 12mm. So if you could do that one up. And I'm undoing it. Okay. And then before we forget, we'll plug these two cables back in. Now you'll see that they are slightly color coded. One is grey, one is black, and the same for the sockets they plug into, so you can't get them wrong. One, and there's the second one. And then finally on this side, the last thing is to put the radiator brackets back on to hold that in place. Of course they say right and left on them, and I'm thinking from the front right and left, but of course it's always measured from in the seat of the car. I'll get this in a minute. I'm not very good with puzzles. Onto the other side. And do those. Right, now at this point we can put the cam belt cover back on, but just before I do that I just wanted to check that I've got the belt over the pulley correctly for the alternator. It then goes down where my finger's pointing underneath this deflection pulley, and then the rest we can do from underneath. So on this side it comes down from the alternator, it goes around your air conditioning pump and then over the tensioner pulley, and then this one goes around your crankshaft pulley. Now, I don't know why these things are always harder to put back on than they were to take off, because in theory it should be exactly the same. Just checking from both sides that everything's lined up. And if I can get my foam pad and get some lighting on. And let's see now. Okay, what I'm going to do is do the crankshaft pulley first. There we go. Now we should be able to lift it over this one. Yeah, perfect. Okay, I'm just going to do that up finger tight for now so it can still move on the tensioner. Okay, give me a second to grab some more tools. Okay, for the next two bolts you're going to need a 12mm wrench or spanner and a 14mm wrench or spanner. What we're going to be doing is turning this bolt inwards, doing it upwards, and as we do it up it's going to bring this pulley up to tension the belt. Now the measurement for the belt is actually where my finger is here, so if you can see that belt moving there, we're going to tension it until that has got around 4 to 5mm of play in either direction. So if you pull it up, push it upwards, it'll be 4 to 5mm upwards before it's tight, and the same going the other way. So here we go, let's start doing this up. I'll probably be able to do some of this with my fingers actually. Oh, not very much. How are we doing now? No, there's still lots of slack, so we'll keep on going. Okay, it's just starting to tighten up. Okay, I'd say we're about there. I think 4 or 5mm is about 1/4 inch. So we've got a little bit of movement there. Of course, if it's too slack, you'll get some squeal, assuming your belt isn't knackered anyway, but I'd say that's about 4 to 5mm. So now we've got it tensioned correctly, you now use your 14mm to do up this bolt here, and this will lock the tensioner pulley in place to stop it accidentally adjusting or moving. So yeah, that feels good. We're all good. And just one final thing back on top. We've just got to get the cam belt cover back on. Now this one slides under the top of, under the bottom of the other one. Oh, I've got to take these bolts back out, haven't I? Okay, so get that one under there. Okay, Stick our bolts back in. And then this one. And the one thing I nearly forgot, of course, is the AC line. So we'll unclip this, bring the line down. First of all, we'll get these lined up here. And then this one here. And then this one here. So, 2 10mm nuts. One 12mm nut. And then final one is a 12mm bolt that goes into here. Okay, so that's the job done. Now at this point I'm not going to bother putting the plastic under trays back on. They're not difficult to do, they're pretty much self-explanatory, but the reason I'm particularly leaving them off during this job is, if you recall, we noticed that the CV joint boot had split and sprayed grease everywhere. So while this is all apart, I'm going to take the opportunity to clean all that grease up, replace all the missing bolts and bits and pieces, and also do the 2 videos, one on how to replace a strut and one on how to replace a CV boot. So hopefully you can look forward to those in the near future. So for now, that's how you remove and replace an alternator. Watch out for part 3, and then you can see how to strip them down and repair them yourself, save an absolute fortune. They're relatively easy to do if you know how to do it. So for now, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, click on the bell for future updates, and you know, I appreciate you watching my videos. I'll catch you on the next one.